Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of bwell, Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started bwell, Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment or medications if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to bwell, Texas. We're glad you're here. Visit bwelltexas.org.
Welcome, folks, to the first episode of season number 2 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed #1 Houston Cougars content provider. Guys, if you can believe it, we've made it to season 2 and episode number 30 for this labor of love we call the No Conference for Old Men podcast. Unbelievable. We've certainly come a long way and appreciate the loyal fan support we've received along the way since we formed this venture after our Cougs joined the #1 basketball conference in the nation, which obviously spurred the name of our podcast. For the new fans listening in this season, why don't we kick things off with a quick reintroduction to the three old men hosting this thing? Tom, you want to do a quick intro?
Sure. My name is Tom Lidiak. I'm a Houston native. I'm a proud alum of North Shore High School and also University of Houston. I was there during the Phi Slamma Jamma days. I've lived in Iowa now for the past 29 years. My wife's originally from here, and when we got married down in Houston, we decided to move up here. I'm a retired teacher. I taught for 34 years, and then I still do some basketball coaching, so they say. And that's about it. Basketball's my hobby.
Awesome. How about you, Bill? Do a quick intro?
Sure. I'm Bill Walker. I'm also a U of H grad. I transferred to U of H from the University of Wisconsin right after Phi Slamma Jamma. So I was here for a little bit of Guy Lewis and a lot more of Pat Foster. Steve, you always refer to me, or when it's time for me to speak from a player's perspective. Most people that know me, especially from back in high school when I played and fortunate enough to play on a state championship team in Wisconsin, they know that from a player's perspective, that's more of an oxymoron than anything else. But it did allow me a lot of time to sit on the bench and observe and hopefully gain some somewhat insightful knowledge. And so I try to bring that to the podcast.
Too funny. And I'm Steve Chang, 86 grad. Houston Cougar basketball during the Phi Slamma Jamma years was my greatest passion and connection to the university at the time. And I'm the big data analytics geek out of the three old men. And I'll primarily be using things like Ken Pom with a handful of interesting stats from Metrics and Bart Torvik sprinkled in as well throughout the season. And today, we're also honored with a special guest in Jayme Hollingsworth, fellow contributor on the GoCoogs.com network, who does those fantastic scouting reports during the Houston Cougars men's basketball season. And I would say that he became a household name with Coug fans across the nation when our very own Reed Geddes, I believe, referenced his scouting reports on TV during one of our games. Jayme, why don't you provide the fans with a brief intro around your background?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Gadsden, Alabama. My dad was a high school coach, so I've been on a bench since I was in the second grade as the water boy all the way up through my high school playing career. And then After high school, I went to UAB where I was a manager for Mike Anderson back in the fastest 40 minutes in basketball days. A year after that, our video coordinator left in the middle of the season, and they promoted me to video coordinator. So that's kind of where I got my scouting start. Left UAB, did a few years in retail management, and then decided I really wanted to get back into basketball. So I moved back to Alabama, coached high school girls basketball. Scouting was always my passion. So I'm, making sure my teams were prepared was a big thing for me. My wife is from Houston, so we moved back out here, and I wanted to pick a team and someone that I could get behind, and the time was right for Houston basketball. So they brought me in. welcomed me, and here we are today. So that's me.
That's so awesome. Great to have you here. Thanks for taking the time out. So let's get right into it. And like last season, our first episode will be focused on providing an in-depth review of the 24-25 Houston Cougars men's basketball team with a view into how they will perform this season. Let's start off with an overview perspective on the team going into the season. And why don't we start off with our guest, Jayme, if you want to provide your, scouting report on the team this year. What are your thoughts going into the season?
Well, my first thought is next week is one of the most important weeks of in American history because basketball's back. Jackson State visits the Fertitta Center, and we get the season up and going. So I'm super excited about that.
Nice.
Last year I was watching a UConn game, and it was early in the season, and I can't remember who the commentator was, but his comment about UConn was they're like Noah's Ark. They've got two of everything. Well, when I look at this roster, that's what I see. We've got two guys that could sub in and out at any time, at every position. And we're deep, extremely deep. We found out today that, Jacob McFarland's going to be out. We don't know how long. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes.
Yeah, huge bummer on that.
But all 13 guys could play. I don't know what the plan is, if any are going to redshirt. I heard Coach Sampson speaking on John Rothstein earlier this week, and he said that he's only going to play 5 guards. So it'll be interesting to see who those 5 guards are and what the plan is. But this is probably the deepest roster that we've had since I've been here for sure.
Yeah, agreed. How about you, Tom? What do you think from a coach's perspective?
Well, I'll start off with this little saying here. If you look at our program, look at Kelvin Sampson's program, one thing that sticks out to me is the saying, tradition never graduates. You could substitute the word culture for tradition, but that's how I'll sum up the Coug program under Coach Sampson. It's like the great high school programs, like North Shore football. They graduate everybody, and people think they're going to have a down year, only to have the JV guys step up and fill roles and have another successful season. The exception is that this year we returned just about everybody. But in the preceding years, we had to replace 3 starters. I think one year we actually had to replace 4 starters and didn't miss a beat. Technically, we only added Milos Uzan from the portal. But I consider Roberts, Cryer, Arsenault, and Malik Wilson as de facto portal additions. A healthy Arsenault might have been drafted last season, and getting Roberts, Cryer, and Wilson back was like hitting the jackpot. When you look at some of our conference foes, people will look at Kansas and Baylor's portal additions and be impressed without considering how they will mesh with their returning players. Will there be chemistry problems, et cetera? But with the exception of Milos, we know our guys are totally bought into Kelvin's system and have great chemistry. I put that down to my notes before the expedition and now can unequivocally say that Milos is exactly what we needed at the point guard position. And I'm sure y'all will add some of your own little nuggets with Milos and what you saw in the exhibition game. You can't talk about U of H basketball this coming season without mentioning the loss of Jamal Shedd. Many people, including me, I know Bill and Steve probably felt this way last year, but he's probably the greatest point guard in the storied history of our program. We'll miss his leadership, his tenacity, his knack for hitting clutch shots. The best candidate, I think, to be a vocal leader is Roberts. If you look at our starting 5, I don't know about Milos, but it seems like they're pretty quiet guys, not really vocal on the court. But I think that the candidate to be that leader is Juwan, because this is like his 6th year here.
Yeah.
As far as clutch shooting, I look for Emmanuel, LJ, provide clutch shooting in tight games. I will mention we also lose Damian Dunn, who is off to Pitt. My question is, I don't know how we're going to replace his hundreds of pump fakes. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe we got somebody can step in and fill that role. Seriously, though, I wish the young man, success at his new place. What will this team's identity be? Every team has an identity, whether it's good, whether it's bad. And as long as Kelvin's the coach, our identity is always going to be the same. The names may change over the years, but Kelvin, he's the rock. His teams are always going to play hard-nosed man-to-man. Sorry, old Coug, we're not going to play any zone. It's always man-to-man. We'll rebound and we'll take care of the ball and play unselfishly. Saying that, I think it'd be well worth the $10 or so. If you're really interested in our program, to get Kelvin's book on Amazon, that you can get him used books for $10 or so. And the chapter, I think it's chapter 3, the chapter on his Montana Tech days is well worth the price of the whole book, because once you read that chapter, you know who Kelvin is as a coach. He's the same coach as he was back then at 25 years old, making a couple of $1,000 a year. There was no like carrot of making the type of money that coaches make today. He did it because he loved basketball. It was a labor of love. He could have gone to law school. He could have done some other things, but he decided to, I wouldn't say take a vow of poverty, but a couple $1,000s a year. Yeah. The game has changed, but Kelvin's core beliefs are still the same. The game the other day it was encouraging to me to see in the exhibition that we didn't bleed the shot clock as much as we did the past couple of years, and resort to ISO ball. I thought the offense seemed to have much more quote unquote flow than the last couple of years. Hope it's something that we continue to do. It appeared when Emmanuel and LJ had open shots, they took them instead of passing them up and seeing if we could get a better shot. I thought last year we passed up too many open shots early in the shot clock, only get a fourth shot as the shot clock expired. I think, Jayme, you alluded to this. Barring injury, Kelvin has said on several different platforms that he intends to play only 9 guys. And, you have to take Kelvin at his word. And I'm thinking we'll see Milos, LJ, Emmanuel at the guard / wing positions, and Javier and Juwan at the big spots. And then you bring JoJo and Arsenault will be the first off the bench. I can't think of any other team in the country that can bring those two types of players off the bench. So you can say we basically have 7 starters. To me, that's incredible.
It is.
8th and 9th guys, I think, are going to be Malik and Ramon. That's going to leave Ced, Chase, Mercy, and Cordell probably this year just playing mop-up minutes unless something changes between now and whenever. Jayme, you mentioned we received the news today that McFarland broke his leg at practice. Tough break for him because he redshirted last year and now has to watch from the bench for another year. However, it was interesting for me to see in the exhibition game that McFarland got in the game before Ced did.
Yep.
Which brings me to my next point, which is Mercy Miller. There's a lot of conversation on the message boards about Mercy and how much playing time they'll think he get or should he be getting. Well, I got one word for those who are going to be disappointed. That word is defense. Kelvin knows what he has defensively when it comes to returning players, and he knows where the newcomers are at defensively, because in all the offseason workouts, they work on defense. They don't work on individual offensive skill development in the hours that they're given. Kelvin expects his players to do that on their own time. The facility's open 24/7 for the players to work on their offensive game. Managers are available 24/7 to rebound and pass and, operate the shooting gun. So Kelvin uses that allotted time to work on things like transition defense, pick and roll defense, monster in the post and rebounding, and he doesn't have to wait until we start playing games to determine whether, a newcomer is ready defensively or not. Having said all that, I like what I saw from Mercy, in that exhibition defensively. Well, we'll see, but that's the way I as a coaching, perspective, that's the way I look at the Cougs this year. It's like Jayme said, it's exciting time of the year.
Yeah, no, those great insights. How about you, Bill, from a player's perspective?
Well, the first thing I have written down aligns exactly with what you said, Jayme, when you made the Noah's Ark reference. I love the depth. This year. Also love the experience. I think, another year and, the defense and the rebounding are static. They're always going to be phenomenal. There's not going to be a variation there. Offensively, though, I think the perimeter shooting is going to be better this year with
agree.
Cryer and Sharp being a year older. I think Terrence is going to have a good year offensively, and so I think the experience is going to help in a lot of areas. Yeah, I like a lot of. I don't want to put a lot of emphasis on just one exhibition game, but I did really like. I mean, the defense and the rebounding were phenomenal against A&M over the weekend, but you kind of expect that. I love the ball movement. Yep. That actually leads me to a concern, but I absolutely love the ball movement. We got open shots, we hit a lot of them, but I loved how unselfishly and how quickly the ball was moving, and Tugler was just as incredibly or even more so active than he's been in the past, and I also like the fact that it looked like they were getting Roberts the ball in some different spots, kind of allowing him to be able to make some moves to the basket that he's more comfortable making, and he's going to see an uptick in his numbers this year. And one of the things, I'd listed a couple of concerns. One of them is making free throws this year, because I think that we're going to go to the line a lot more than we have in the past. I think Roberts is going to be, like I said, put in positions to get the ball, to be able to get to the hoop, draw more fouls, and Uzan penetrates as well, and I think he'll be picking up some fouls. The one big concern I have is when it comes down to it in some of the tougher games, who's going to take over when perhaps the shooting isn't there, because it's not always going to be there, and that's just how it is with U of H. But when the shooting's not there, if Sharp and Cryer are both off, and we need someone to just take over and ultimately get the ball in the basket, whether it's themselves or getting it out to somebody. I mean, the person that does that as well or better than anyone, and I've been saying it since the end of last season, and I'll continue to repeat it, is Jamal Shed. Yeah. Unfortunately, we no longer have Jamal Shed. So who's going to take over when we need someone to take over? I think everyone's incredibly unselfish. Like I said, the ball movement's going to result in open shots, but when we need someone to take over, the number one candidate obviously is Uzan, because that's a lot of his game naturally. He penetrates, he makes damn good decisions with the ball. He can score if he needs to. He can get the ball to the big guys off penetration into the paint, kick it out. So he'd be the number one candidate. Hopefully, and I imagine Sharp will get a little more dominant off the dribble, and he may be the other. And I even think that and you could see it in the A&M game. Almost every time down the court when Arsenault was in the game, he had his hand up like, hey, get me the ball, ball. And so I think that he's going to be aggressive offensively this year. I think, he's not going to be bringing the ball down, but he gets the ball on the wing. I'd look for him to step up and try to take over as well. Those are really the two concerns. I mean, injuries are always a concern, and it stinks to lose McFarland before he's even played a game. And I know, Tom, you mentioned the entire year. I hadn't heard that yet, and hopefully it's not the entire year, but obviously he'll be out for probably a significant amount of time. And so if everyone can stay healthy, if we don't go through what we went through last year, I mean, I think it's going to be an extraordinary year. And, all things being as they are right now, I think we will win the Big 12, even though most people pick Kansas. I think it'll be us. And as you guys saw from the little betting slip,
hold on. We're getting to our predictions later, man.
Oh, sorry.
Anything else, Bill?
No, I think that about covers it. I'm just excited for Monday. I'm excited for the season to begin. I guess in my intro, I didn't mention that I am in Houston, so I'm at every game and every home game. But yeah, I'm super excited to be there and super excited for the season to begin.
Yeah, great viewpoints, guys. And the analytics are consistent with what you all have articulated. With the great sustained success over the last 5 seasons Coach Sampson has had with our program, our Cougars are the analytics darlings across the board with all of the major players. Ken Palm, Haslem Metrics, Bart Torvik, and even the newer players in Evan Mia all have Houston as a pretty clear number one in the nation with the preseason analytics. Ken Palm's overall adjusted efficiency margin is always going to be the jump off point for me, as I articulated last year, whenever I look at analytics, because it's really the primary stat that takes into account both adjusted offensive and defensive efficiency in ranking teams going into the season. And just to remind folks or new fans listening in, to provide a little bit of context of how we view things with analytics, my threshold has been if you're top 40 or better in an area, it's a major strength. And if you're 175 and below, you've got major problems in a particular area, and it really needs to be addressed. All in relationship to making the NCAA tourney at the end of the season. If we look at all the major stats I focus on during the season, the Cougars are stellar across the board in preseason metrics. In KenPom, our adjusted offensive efficiency is ranked 5th in the nation, which our fans always do a double take on, but we'll get into the details as we take a closer look at how we achieve that. And not surprisingly, as you guys have all mentioned, our adjusted defensive efficiency is ranked number 1 in the nation yet again. And combining the two gives us the number 1 rating in all analytics sites. Now, looking more closely on the offensive side of things, we've historically been applauding offense, ranking number 349 last year in adjusted tempo, and we don't shoot the ball well, ranking 193 last year in effective field goal percentage. And it's basically the reason why fans complain about our offense. But we've historically hung our hat on getting more shots than our opponents by not turning the ball over, ranking 9th in the country in turnover margin. We offensive rebound like heck, where we were 11th in the nation last year, and we pressure teams on defense, ranking 3rd in opponents' turnover percentage. When you look at some of the more unique stats by Haslem Metrics, you really get to see the bigger picture. We're 11th in the nation on quick points off of steals and 13th in the nation on quick points off of offensive rebounds, resulting in a number 1 ranking on field goal attempt rate, basically meaning we get off way more shots than anyone else. And so even if we're not the most efficient, just by shooting more, we're going to score more. Now, zeroing in on our bread and butter defensive side, we're elite at so many key metrics. In KenPom, our effective field goal percentage defense has been our staple, challenging every shot, ending last year at number 2 in the nation, number 11 on 3-point shots, and number 3 on 2-point shots. Turnover percentage defense was number 3 in the nation, which is really a more recent phenomena over the last 3 years, and our block percentage ended up at number 2 in the country. Bottom line is that we were smothering on defense with nowhere for teams to attack. I know we're going to get into the roster makeup next season in the next segment, but with 4 of 5 starters running it back, our 2 starter-like players coming back from injury, and really looking good in our exhibition, plus Coach Sampson hand-picked transfer in Milos Uzan to backfill Shed's point guard duties. Gentlemen, I think we're in for a special ride this season. And I will be flying in, as I mentioned, offline from California for way more games to watch live this season. Now, as we get back into taking a closer look at the roster, and I know you guys have already covered a little bit of this in the previous segment, why don't we kick things off with a closer look to the roster? Tom, what's your take in terms of looking at the team makeup from a player perspective this season?
You know, if you've been watching U of H basketball the last couple of years, a lot of these guys don't need a introduction. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, the Milos Uzan was the key transfer portal piece. Like you said, carefully selected to run the point guard position. It's kind of having like the keys to the Ferrari, you know, not just going to hand it over to some inexperienced player. So, you know, Kelvin went out and found a guy that had 2 years experience starting for a Big 12 team at Oklahoma. And, you know, LJ played 3 years at Baylor, won a national championship. He was on that national championship team. This will be his second year, with the Cougs. Emmanuel's experience. He's played for the Israeli national team, as a youngster. So the bright lights aren't going to affect these guys. They've been there, done that. JBR coming back for another year. Robert's his 6th year. And then, of course, we have JoJo coming back for his 2nd year. And then this will be Terrence's 3rd year, really probably only his 2nd. Malik Wilson, after we had all those injuries last year, he made so many key contributions. I think once he knew that he was going to get some playing time, because he basically had to be on the floor because he had nobody else, it seemed like he was maybe a little more relaxed on the offensive end. But he had some big shots and really a good defensive player. I think he's only 6'1", but he has really great length. He's able to go up there and, I would say alley-oop passes, but every time we throw an alley-oop pass, it's a miss. But Malik is really outstanding defensively. He played at Texas Tech for a couple of years, and then we have Ramon, who's one of my favorites, just because big time scorer in high school at Pearland. I think he was the Guy Lewis Award winner. Scored a lot of points, and he gets to college and. You look around and everybody's the leading scorer on their team. So, you got to be able to do something else. And he found his niche, found his role as a guy that dives on the floor, takes charges, he rebounds. Just a grinder, great work ethic. When coaching staff has asked, who's your gym rat? Well, it was Ramon and Ryan Elvin last year. So even though Ramon might only get like one shot, maybe a game or whatever, he practices on his game more than anybody else. Then we have Jacob, who's out for the year. Jacob McFarland. I wouldn't say out for the year. I'm sorry about that, but he had surgery today on his foot, broke it at practice yesterday. We have Big Sed that's coming back, and once again, due to all those injuries last year, we had to rely on Sed to come in, and he gave us some valuable minutes, especially in that Kansas game when he went in there and he stood toe-to-toe with Mr. Dickinson, and he more than held his own. By the way, he had a little nice dunk there, ran the floor. And I don't know if you've ever seen Sed run, but for a guy that's like 6'9", 6'10", and he's listed at 265, I'm not sure what his actual weight is. He can really run. I mean, he can really get up and down the floor, but he had a little nice dunk in the exhibition game. We have the two guys, one of the other two guys that redshirted last year, Cordell, who broke both wrists last year. That's why he didn't play last year. The redshirted him. And then you got the two freshmen. You have Chase McCarty, one of the best shooters in the high school class last year. And then we have Mercy Miller, which has a lot of people excited, but we'll just have to see whether, where Mercy gets some serious playing time this year. When you're at Kansas playing in Fog Allen, and it's a tight game, Kelvin's going to go with who he trusts, and it'd be difficult for an inexperienced player to get in the game, but you never know.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. How about you, Bill? What's your view? Any additional perspectives on the players and the makeup of the roster?
Yeah, well, not a whole lot more to say. I think everyone's pretty well been covered. I'll mention a couple of things. Number one, with Uzan, it wasn't simply a matter of Kelvin going out and recruiting a player that he felt comfortable with coming in and replacing Shed. Uzan wanted to come to U of H, and he recruited us just as much as he was recruited by us. He wants to be here. He's a hell of a hard worker. He's smart. His dad, like you, Jayme, his dad is a basketball coach, and so he's got a high basketball IQ. He wants to get better on both ends of the court, and so I think he's going to do a great job. Again, the concern is filling Shed's shoes, but I say that because Shed was just so almost otherworldly. I mean, on and off the court, he was so valuable to this program, and so he's generational. He's not someone that you come across constantly. So I don't ever want to give the impression that I'm downgrading or not having enough positive things to say about Uzan. It's just that he's filling some huge shoes. I think he's an ideal person to come in, and while it's impossible for anyone to fill Shed's shoes, I'm really happy with Uzan as our new point guard. I think both Cryer and Sharp, who are going to most likely be the two leading scorers, I think their shooting is going to be better this year. I think, and once again, I hate to heavily focus on just the one exhibition game, but they were moving the ball so well, and that was part of the reason that we blew A&M out, in addition to the defense and the relentless rebounding. So I'm expecting just great things from our backcourt in general. Terrence coming back, I think Terrence is in for a big year. He's been so highly rated every year, and it always tends to fall a little short. Last year's unfair because he was injured, but this year I'm high on Arsenault. I think he's gonna do really good things for us. It surprised me at the beginning of the year last year that he came out and rebounded so well, but he did. And I think he's gonna play well all around again this year, and I think he's gonna ultimately position himself well to be drafted. And the others, when we have two at every position, it's now said as the backup center, although it'll be Juan, Javier, and JoJo playing the overwhelming majority of the minutes. But, if we need someone to come in and bang and, pick up some fouls and be physical, and Tom, you mentioned Dickinson, and that's exactly who I think of when I think of said coming in and being effective. Whatever we can get out of him is great. So that's about what I see with the team this year. I'm not going to at any point understate or underestimate the loss of Shed because of everything he did, but I think this is going to be an extraordinary year.
Yeah, agreed. How about you, Jayme? Really curious in terms of what your take is on the roster makeup this season.
Yeah, so coming out of the Texas A&M game, if I was scouting Houston, I would start with the guards. Milos, super creative with the ball in his hands, made some really nice spin moves. I think that we'll see his game go to another level since he's playing with better players this year. He can make his move inside, kick out to an open shooter. Backup point guard Malik, thought he looked a lot more comfortable last Sunday than he did all of last year. He missed a wide open layup, and I know he got chewed out in film for that. But other than that, I thought he played really, really well. He's got that nice little 2-dribble pull-up. And then Sampson has said in the past that he's one of the best defenders on the team by far. So I think we'll see him take his game to another level this year. LJ, we all know what he can do from a shooting perspective. But I think an underrated part about his game is also that getting in the paint, little floater. So I really like that. Mercy, let's say he backs up LJ this year. Hard to say what will happen there, but all he sees is that green light. When he touches the ball, he's looking to get a bucket. Had over 60 points in a game last year in high school. I've talked about he knocked out LeBron's 2 sons 2 years ago. So, yeah, he is the next guy, that I would circle as that Marcus Sasser type player for sure. E-Man, incredible, man. He can shoot it from super deep. I think his second 3 of the game the other day was 40-footer. He's taken his rebounding and his defense to another level. So he's going to be a good wing defender. Terrence, man, just so good to see him back on the court. Yeah. That's the main thing for me. But y'all are right. He had his hand up every trip down. His mid range is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I know he can be a 3-and-D guy for us if he needs to be, but yeah, when he gets it in that short corner, he doesn't miss that shot very often. Moving on to the bigs, J1, if you let him get it on that right block, get it over that shoulder, it's over.
Yes.
But I think Tom mentioned it earlier, they got him in a few new places on Sunday. I saw him catching the pinch post, face up, did a little skip pass. So I think if they can use him up there, he's such an underrated passer.
Yes.
He's a really, really good passer. But like I said, if he gets it in that left hand for that little hook shot, it's a wrap. Ramon Walker, glue guy, the ultimate glue guy. Every single team in America needs a Ramon Walker. First one on the floor. His first defensive possession once he came in the game the other day was a charge.
Yeah.
So he's that guy. Made a couple of threes the other day, which was cool to see. But yeah, he's that guy that every team in America should want. We didn't get to see Javier the other day, but we know throw it up, he'll go get it. Killer rebounder on both ends. Maybe the best shot blocker in America. And then JoJo, same thing. I thought he looked a lot more comfortable the other day. All of his shots were just rimming out, but they were all right
shots.
there.
Yeah.
I think he's extended his range a little bit. We saw the short corner jumper that rimmed out. Who knows? He may even hit a 3 or 2 this year. So that'd be something to keep an eye on. Big Sed coming off the bench. We've mentioned him a few times. Last year on the podcast that I was listening to, everybody's like, we can't put Sed in. What do we do if Sed gets the ball? Who cares if Sed gets the ball? We don't need him to score. We've got guys that can score. So let him go out there, be a bully, get 5 fouls, and high five is coming off the floor.
Jim, you know what Kelvin did with Sed to make him a better player? Get him as far away from the ball as possible.
Yeah.
It just made him a better player.
The one thing I noticed about Sed was I was in the man cave last year watching our game at Central Florida, and I can't remember number 5's name for Central Florida, but he just kept slapping. Sed just kept poking him. He kept slapping his hand. That dude gets under guys' skin. I know Hunter Dickinson wanted nothing to do with him at our place last year. Cordell, man, he's really coming into his body. He's gotten so much bigger since he got to U of H. Came in, showed his speed the other day, showed his passing ability, made a great skip pass to Ramon for 3. Great, up-and-comer for us for sure. Jacob, we'll miss him, hopefully. It's one of those things where he can get back later in the year. I thought, he showed a lot of potential. Just his length to just jump as high as you can with your arms straight up in the air. It's going to make it hard for anybody to shoot over him. So if he's out for the whole year, he can use that to just keep getting stronger and come back. I know Coach Bishop was on your show last time, and he talked about the guys that are redshirting that he takes them to another level in their offseason. So if he gets the medical red shirt, then I know Coach Bishop will get him right for sure. And then last but not least, another Alabama guy, Chase McCarty. He was a player in Alabama before he transferred down to IMG, so I saw him play a good bit in high school. He reminds me a lot of Terrence. They have similar games defensively, good length. So I'm really excited for his future and know that he'll be a good player for us down the road for sure.
Awesome. Thanks for those insights, Jayme. We only lose one of our top players, but obviously, as you guys have all mentioned, it's a huge one in Shed. But this segment's for you, Bill. I know you've mentioned over and over your concern around losing Shed this year and what that would potentially mean for this year's team. And I don't want to discount his contributions either, but if you compare it to last season, we lost 3 starters, right? In Sasser, Walker, and Mark coming into the season. And we did fine. With analytics, I like to use Bart Torvik's top 30 player box score plus minus in assessing how players impact winning. And obviously, Shed was our number 1 guy by far at an astounding plus 11.6 last season. And that was a huge jump up for him from, I think he was in the 4s or 5s, right, the season before. Sasser, however, the year before, he was a plus 11. So they're basically comparable. And then we lost 2 other players in Walker and Mark from that team. And then for number 2 this year, we have Roberts. And Roberts also made that huge jump, 10.6. Right? Then it goes to Cryer at plus 8.2, Francis plus 7.2, and finally Sharp at plus 7. I mean, you've got a core of guys that are difference makers, right? Coming back, and you only expect them to get better. Then you add in Milos Uzan, who was a plus 2, but I expect that to be a huge jump. You know, Jayme, as you had mentioned, he's going to be playing with much better players this season. So you expect those numbers to go up. And we're loaded in the starting 5. Then you add in Terrence Arsenault, who was at plus 6.6 before his injury and really coming into his own. And quite honestly, for a guy that hasn't played in almost a year since his injury, and I know, again, it was only an exhibition game against A&M, but boy, he looks smooth. And it clearly looked like the game has slowed down for him heading into this season. Malik Wilson came on strong towards the end of the season, as you guys had mentioned. And I was a huge critic of him last year until he started getting those minutes, because I felt like he was always in the wrong position and just not making smart plays. But he ended the season at a plus 5.5, which is huge. And then my favorite player on the team is the old guys know, JoJo Tugler, who was at a 4.6 before his injury. And this is all before even mentioning Ramon Walker, Mercy Miller, any of the other redshirt or true freshmen. And we're talking about the deepest team in the Sampson era here at Houston. There's no sandbagging it this year, guys. We are stacked for a national championship run. So I'm excited about this roster. I'm not as concerned about, losing Shed, because we lose players every year. And I know he's a generational talent, but I don't think there's any way to spin this team being, and it's reflected right in the analytics as well as the preseason AP polls. We're one of the favorites for a national championship run. Okay, so now finally for the predictions: overall regular season record, conference record, and then national ranking for UH this season. Bill, I'm going to let you go first.
Okay, well, there are 20 games that I think it's 20. It's either 19 or 20 that I think we absolutely win. I don't think, even if we have a poor shooting night, with our standards of just rebounding as well as we rebound both ends of the court, defense, we're going to win those games. There are 10 games that could go potentially either way. We have Auburn here on November 9th. We have Alabama in Las Vegas, number 2 rated Alabama, November 26th. We're at Kansas State, January 11th. We're at Kansas the 25th. Yeah. We've got Baylor here on February 10th. We're at Arizona on the 15th, versus Iowa State on the 22nd, at Tech on the 24th, at home against Kansas on March 3rd, and at Baylor on March 8th. Of those 10, if we go 6-4, I think that's damn good, which would put us at, I think that would put us at 26-4, assuming we've got the other, it's 20 rather than 19, but that'd put us at 26-4. I mean, if we go 7-3, 27-3 going into the Big 12 tournament, either way we're a 1 seed, regardless of what happens in the tournament. And as I began to allude to earlier, having just made a trip to Las Vegas, I put a little money down on a future bet and picked the team to win the national championship. And so it's easy to be biased and to say, yes, I think U of H is going to win the national championship. But when you've actually got to throw your money down, then it's, what are you going to do then? And I had no hesitations. Steve, I do think you underestimate Shed's impact on the team. But with all that said, I think we're cutting down the nets this year.
Nice. How about you, Jayme? What's your take?
So I truly believe that we will cut down the nets. As far as non-con goes, I've got us at 10-1, either Auburn or Alabama. I had an opportunity, I guess it was about a week and a half ago, that I went to Alabama. My dad flew me in. We went and watched the Alabama Wake Forest exhibition game, and they're the real deal.
Yeah, agreed.
They beat Wake Forest by 25. They didn't have Grant Nelson, Latrell Wrightsell, or Chris Youngblood, who could potentially all three be starters for them. I mean,
yep.
So that'll be a tough game. Yeah. It's one that we can win for sure. If they played like they did against Memphis the other day, I think that we probably get them. Mm-hmm. Financially for the Cougs, it would be good if we could win that one and win the championship.
Yeah.
Auburn's going to be really talented. So I'll give them 10-1. We'll see what happens. Yeah. You could absolutely go 11-0 in the non-con. I would say 15-5, 14-6 in the conference, just because I think the league is better all around this year than it was last year. Cincinnati, BYU, even West Virginia, Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State's not going to beat us, but they're gonna beat a few more teams than they did last year. So I think the conference is just better overall. It's a little deeper, but with some of these teams, they're being put together year by year, and I think it takes a while. Like the Kansas States, they have an incredible roster, but who knows how well they all play together. So they're one of those teams that are going to beat some teams, and then they're going to have some bad losses. So it wouldn't shock me if one of these surprise teams were to upset us this year, whereas they did not last year. We know how good Iowa State is. I would take us and Iowa State over Kansas right now.
Yep. Me too.
They're good. Kansas is a good team, but again, they're kind of thrown together a little bit more than they have been in previous years. So we'll see how they gel. But I would say 15-5 to 14-6. If you go 14-6, it puts you at 24-7 overall. So that's where I have us. But I think that as long as we stay healthy, we can make that run in the big show this year and cut down the nets on Monday night.
Nice.
By the way, just from the research I've done and from what little I've seen so far, I do have us in Alabama. I think we're the two top teams. I think Kansas is a bit overrated. I think Duke's a bit overrated. Connecticut's going to be very good again, but I think the two best teams are Alabama and U of H.
All right.
I agree with that.
How about you, Tom?
I think we win the Big 12 again, and I'm with Jayme and Bill. My prediction is we're going to go 15-5 in the conference. Yeah. This conference is it's tough. When Arizona is predicted around 5th, then the conference is really good.
It's crazy.
I predict we go 9-1 at home. Don't know who the loss is going to be to, but you just never know. So I predict we go 9-1 at home. We go 6-4 on the road. So 15-5, first place in the Big 12. We're the toughest team, and to win the Big 12, of course you have to protect your home court, but you also have to win on the road, and you don't win on the road if you're soft. If you're a front runner like Kansas, they're probably going to split on the road, probably win all their games at home by 100. Non-conference, I say we go 10-1 with the loss coming to Alabama. I think we go 2-1 in that Players Era tournament. And then at the end of the season, I think we go 2-1 in the conference tourney, just because it's a conference tourney, and, in a perfect world, we wouldn't have to play that, because you play basketball for like 2.5 months to see who the best team is in the Big 12. And then you have a tournament for like 4 days, and whoever wins, they hang a banner or whatever. And, it'll probably be Iowa State again, because that's their Super Bowl. I think they would rather have a Big 12 conference tournament banner to hang than win the whole national championship. So I think we finished the season 27-7 with the number 1 seed just because of our, the teams that we play. And then I think we finished the season on a 6-game winning streak and win the national championship and go 33-7. And Kelvin gets to use his ladder and cut the nets. And we'll see if he coaches anymore after that. He's got that contract that he's making like $4 million a year, but it'd be a heck of a way to cap his career. I mean, he's done everything except win a national championship.
Yeah, I'd love to have to make that kind of a decision if it means we win a national championship. But yeah, that's incredible how close. It's uncanny, quite honestly, how close all of our predictions are. Because I've also got us at 25-6 overall, 15-5 in the conference, winning the conference. I think 5 losses will still win the conference this year, given how tough it is. I'm predicting losses also to Bama, just because of where we're playing, losing at KSU, at KU, at Arizona, at Tech, at Baylor. And I also believe we're cutting down the nets for our first national championship. So there you have it. That's it for our second annual Houston Cougars preview and episode number 30 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. Hope you all enjoyed it. And again, would really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We are also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all. Also, please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and be on the lookout for our Big 12 and National Top 25 episode in the coming couple of weeks. So please be on the lookout to download and listen as the episodes drop. Take care, everyone.